What's going on, Forceful players? Ryan Miles here from Alter Reality Gaming, here with episode number 17 of the Daily Mileage. Today, we're going to be talking about E3 and the company that won overall. Spoiler alert, it's Nintendo. They announced the new Smash Bros. Games. Everything else can go, out the window. But no, actually, we're going to be talking about some of the boogeymen of the format, right? What decks do you really need to include in your gauntlet and make sure that you have at least a 40% win rate against? Or at least a 50% win rate across the three of them, because I feel like these are the decks that you need to expect to see going into a competitive event. So the next competitive event that we have is actually going to be ARG Collinsville. And that's going to be probably about 20-25 people. I know that my locals entire scene is going, and that's going to be about 10 to 12 people. So I assume that half the country can supply at least 12 more. But we should be seeing a lot of interesting decks there because it is a pretty competitive region, having both me and my brother, and I believe Alex Blandon coming down, and just like the people that we play test with and stuff like that. So a lot of decent players should have some pretty interesting deck lists. So anyway, what do you need to be beating right now? If you are testing your crazy Umer combo road deck, what are the worries that's going to beat you, right? So I think we talked about this kind of in last week, the video where I did like my top 5 decks. Not much has really changed out of those top 5. IMO looks a little bit less promising. Lumia, I'm still trying to find out the right build, but the big 3, in my opinion right now, are Kirik, Red Green Fair, and Scheherazade, for all the reasons that I described at the time last week, right? Kirik still has Ground and Air Supremacy, the Pathway part, 2 of the best cards of the new set, pretty much, just very, very aggressive. Has a lot of interaction for an aggressive deck, which is a big problem. Like usually, if you remember like traditional aggro decks, like if you could stabilize on the board and then play a guy, you're just kind of if you can just stick a resonator, you can like threaten blockers and kind of like stabilize the game from there. But Kirik is gonna constantly push damage at you. If you ever try and like set up your own board, like you can't out aggro the Kirik aggro. Like it has 1 mana bounce a guy to your hand, it has 1 mana deal 6, it has flip Kirik, deal 25 to your board. Like it's just an aggro deck that's always going to outpace decks that want to play creatures, so you have to play spells to beat it. But like the format right now leans towards 4 Fair Spell, 4 Severing, so it has the tools available to always kind of beat you with what you want to do. The issue is just like the drawing consistency. It's always going to open turn 1 Ground and Air Supremacy, but at the same time it's almost always mulliganing for Ground and Air Supremacy. And Ground and Air Supremacy does cost a lot of strength counters, so it does rely on seeing Hoel Pig or seeing Piggy Squadron to like refill those. And in general, it's like playing on curve. So if you can kill their 1-drop with 1 mana, and then kill their 2-drop with 2 mana, kill their 3-drop with 3 mana, so you really only need like 1 miscalc and then like a stoning to death, and then from there you can start to stabilize. Especially if you're able to knock them off of strength counters with like a Severing Winds. Like if they want to play Hoel Pig, they have to play it for their first card for the turn, or else it's vulnerable to Severing Winds. And if they play it for their first card for turn, that means they're like, if it's turn 2, they have to have a second 1-drop on top of like the Ground and Air Supremacy they already played turn 1. So that means they need 3 1-drops in their openers. Or if they're waiting till turn 3 to play their Hoel Pig, then their Hoel Pig comes down and then their 2-drop is vulnerable to getting severed. So you have a couple ways to play around it, like them getting back strength counters. Like they do have to sometimes just find time to tap to gain strength counters, and then that's pretty vulnerable to Lorite, and Lorite in general is a card that you want against that deck. So there is like interaction available to the Kirik deck, but it's still just like innately strong. It's doing some of the best things in the format, but it is not by any means unbeatable. And a lot of the deck lists are still pretty up in the air. Pretty much the only thing that's consistent is like 4 Hoel Pig, 4 Ground and Air Supremacy. Even Pieli is on an auto 4 of. Some decks I've seen play 3. Piggy is a 4 of. Sylvia is usually a 4 of. And then that's like 24, 26 cards. I almost lost count already. Throw in some more battle arts. Like Playdead could be a 3 to a 4 of. Heaven Sundering Jogging could be a 3 to a 4 of. Like there's a little bit of flexibility with the extra slots and stuff like that. Fair Spell, Severing Winds, those are like vulnerable, flexible slots. Overall, it's mostly like 32 at least cards static across all the lists, but the last couple like flex slots, and even 32 is like generous. The last couple flex slots are not super impactful between different matchups. It's usually just like number of Fair Spell versus number of Severing Winds versus number of Lorite versus number of like extra burn spells or something. So make sure that you're answering turn 1 Ground and Air Supremacy, or if you are not, like your stabilization play is stabilizing your life total as well as your board. because your board is very, very vulnerable to just getting blown out by the Keurig flip. Like, you need to have access to like Lorite to make sure that Keurig doesn't wipe your board, and then like Keurig still does a bunch of damage to your board and puts a 12-10 into play. So difficult to play against. Usually you have to be like turn the corner and then very quickly become the aggressor. Umer combo was an example that like is actually pretty okay against Keurig. If you like just on turn 3 cast your freaking your spell and cheat out the Umer, then yeah, you're gonna win the game. But it's a little bit more vulnerable to stuff like Scheherazade and whatnot. So yeah, that's Keurig. I think Keurig is something you need to have in your gauntlet, and you need to be beating at least 40% of the time, because it's probably going to be the most popular deck. So I would even say that if you want to play a deck at ARG Atlantic City, then like Keurig is the #1 deck to beat. I think it's going to be the most popular because it's the easiest to build and also pretty easy to play. So next up, Red Green FaO is testing very, very well. All the things I said before still apply. It is the #1 reason that you stopped playing Red Green FaO was because True Blade and Otherworld Dreams got printed. And then when Otherworld Dreams got banned, we got Scheherazade, and now we lost Scheherazade and lost True Blade, and once again lost Otherworld Dreams. So playing Mariabella on turn 2 is a very, very real thing that is good. You know, turn 2 Mariabella is good. So there's a lot less interaction for mana dorks. People don't seem to care about them as much right now in their deck building. The exception, of course, is Keurig, because they do have the 1 mana, like, they have like 4 1 mana, or I'm sorry, like 8 1 mana cards that kill a 1-drop. It's the 4 Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm and 4 the Pathway part. And I've even seen some people playing like a small number of Firebird, which is the deal 4 or deal 6 unchaseable. So lots of ways to kill Sacred Elf. That makes the Keurig matchup against it pretty good, but against pretty much everything else, like, there's not a lot of Sacred Elf interaction because the 1-drop removal slot is dedicated to miscalculation right now, to be able to kill the Keurig stuff. So Sacred Elves go unchecked, and when Sacred Elves go unchecked, they turn into Mariabellas. They turn into Fiery Foxes, they turn into a lot of card draw, they turn into FaO Flip. And FaO Flip with a Sprinting Flame Horse is still a lot of damage, but like the real problem in this deck is going to be Mariabella. There's such little reason to run Alhamat's Black Lightning right now. Black is like the 3rd best color in the game, instead of like the 2nd best where it normally is. Like white is pretty good right now because of how good it is against aggro. You do have miscalculation, you do have the Naughty Child's Chastising, which is surprisingly good against some of these aggro decks. So Mariabella is something that's like kind of sneaking up in there and just doing very, very well. Not something you want to be caught off guard about. So what are you going to do about it, right? Well, in green, you can't kill Sacred Earth anymore, which is good. You shouldn't be able to do that. But in blue, you have pretty much nothing. You have the Drifting Little Moon, I guess. It's a 1 mana 5/5 that can tap to deal 400 to a Rested Resonator. Unfortunately, that means Sacred Elf has already kind of cashed in its value, but it's a way to kill it. It only gets 1 mana out of it. It's not terrible, but I mean, that's pretty much all you got in blue. Red, Lightning Strike, Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm, Ancient Heartfelt Fire, Memory to Memoria. These are all things I can deal with it in red. Red's probably like one of the best colors to deal with Sacred Elf. And then in black, you have Unseen Pressure, you have Spider's Web, and you have Sword of the New Moon. So that does kind of lead towards why I think Rhea might actually be really good. One of the main reasons is like Spider's Web is just a good card in Rhea. It's good against Sacred Elf. Sword of the New Moon is a good card in Rhea. It's good against like Mariabella. Like you can answer Mariabella for 1 mana with an Awakened Sword of the New Moon. That's really, really relevant. So that's one of the reasons I think Rhea might sneak back up. It's also like pretty playable against Keurig. But like the main boogeyman there is going to be Red Green FaO. Like Rhea is one of the only decks that's going to be able to like consistently handle like the Mariabella stuff. The problem, of course, is still dealing with the FaO Flip. But like, you know, like you sideboard like 4 Last Days of the Powerless Dragonoid, might be able to do something about it. But yeah, so Red Green FaO, like make sure you're thinking about in your deck building and especially in your sideboard, can I deal with Sacred Elf? Can I deal with Mariabella? And then can I not die to a Sprinting Flame Horse FaO Flip after I've like exhausted those first couple turns of resources, because it's just a lot of damage, you know. And because the red green deck does tend to run out of resources pretty quickly, you can actually like stabilize once they flip if you don't immediately die. So let's just like make sure you're putting that in your testing pool, right? And then the last deck, of course, is going to be Scheherazade, the Rogue Crusher. A lot of like the super cool, interesting, potentially rogue fun decks that are somehow able to beat Keurig or Red Green FaO. Like you can't also beat Scheherazade. It's like the third piece of the puzzle that's just like you're so all in against these red decks and making sure that they're not getting a good time against you. Like how do you beat the like toolbox like style, quick cast, beefy, turbo flip, insane power of Scheherazade. It's got a lot of power out of adding some new stories to its deck. It's usually not playing Black Tears now. It's playing Evil Elemental Uprising, Last Days of a Powerless Dragonoid. I'm sorry, that's not correct. It's not playing Evil Elemental Uprising. It's playing Last Days of a Powerless Dragonoid, Approaching the Truth, Scarlet's Agony, Last Days of a Puppet, and the Seed of Rebirth. And Seed of Rebirth is actually really good. One of the main things that's making this deck pretty terrifying is Ray, the Black Owl, which flips into 0. So all of this spot removal that you're putting in against the aggro decks, you know, the Sword of the New Moon, the Miscalculation, the Arrival of the Hero, the Unseen Pressure, you know, what have you, all that stuff that's really good against the red decks is really bad against a Ray that flips into 0. And even if you have like good spot removal, like actual like Forbidden Arts or Null Darkness, that kind of stuff, like actual just like you see Ray and you're just like, okay, I need to kill that, you kill it immediately. Like the fact that Seed of Rebirth can be cast at instant speed means that like at the end of your turn they can Seed of Rebirth into Ray and then it just flips in the start of their turn, and you have such a small window of interaction to actually do it. And like you already had to kill it the first time, but now you have to kill it again at instant speed. Like it's really difficult to do that. And then if your deck isn't like, they have enough counter spells to be able to get around Final Battle because of like, you know, Vanish, or if they're blue they're playing Millennia Bond. There's a new 3-drop quick counter spell that like removes a spell from the game if they want to play that. And yeah, because they operate at instant speed, like they're able to pretty easily beat around Final Battle and stuff like that if they really need to. So spooky stuff. Definitely kind of worried about Scheherazade, just like not like being insanely powerful on its own. It's just like it very easily like completes the metagame of like being good enough on its own to like be a good deck, and then also being so different from the other good decks that it makes it hard to deck build anything else right now. But yeah, Ray is the next thing on my radar that I'm looking at. Because it just has a lot of like high value stuff. Like one of the main problems is that it doesn't generate mystery counters very well, but I actually have been looking at the mystery counter pool a little bit more on the NOT database, on the Force of Will official database, and it's been difficult, but I've done it, and I think there might be something there. So I'm going to be messing around with that. I'm kind of off of IMUL, haven't really been liking it, unfortunately, and I will talk about that a bit more later on. But yeah, Ray is my next pet project to try and see what I can solve in the meta. But if you're testing right now, make sure you're testing against Keurig, make sure you're testing against Red Green Fair, and make sure you're testing against a bunch of different iterations of Scheherazade. Like Scheherazade's like the most dynamic deck build of the three. Like I don't expect people to come up with a fully optimized Scheherazade deck right away. Like it does kind of want to shape itself to the meta, and there's a lot of opportunities right now to play pretty much any color. You can be green black, you can be green black white, you can be green black blue. There's almost an argument for being green black red, but maybe not. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. That's pretty much all I have to say on that subject, and once again, thank you for watching. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and stay classy.